People say heroes wear uniforms, but sometimes, a real hero stands in a dim hallway holding nothing but a mop. No medals, no rank, just a tired smile hiding years of pain. Nobody at Crestwood High knew the janitor, Daniel Carter, was a single dad who had already survived more battles in life than most soldiers face in war. And nobody imagined that one night, when 3 men cornered a terrified girl behind the school gym, it would be Daniel who stepped out of the shadows. What happened in the next 3 minutes would change his life forever, because the next morning, a Navy admiral in full uniform walked into the school asking only one question. "Where is the man who protected my daughter?" Daniel Carter's day always began before the sun rose. He would quietly slip out of the small, 2-bedroom apartment he shared with his daughter, Lily, careful not to wake her. At 11 years old, Lily still slept with a stuffed dolphin tucked under her arm, the same one her mother had given her before the illness took her away. Daniel kissed her forehead gently, whispering, "Back before breakfast, sweetheart," as he grabbed his worn jacket and keys. Life had become a pattern of silent sacrifices, and Daniel had grown used to carrying the weight of 2 parents on his shoulders. The school hallways were empty at dawn, echoing with the squeak of his cart wheels. Most staff barely noticed him, a nod here, a rushed morning there, but Daniel preferred it that way. The fewer people who asked about his past, the better. He wasn't ashamed, just tired of explaining how he lost everything when his wife died and how he never returned to the service afterward. Instead, he took the janitorial job because it allowed him 2 things, stability, and the ability to be near Lily, who studied at the same school. As hours passed, Daniel worked through classrooms, fixing broken chairs, cleaning forgotten spills, and listening to students' laughter during recess. He admired their innocence but worried for Lily, who had grown quieter lately. She didn't tell him much, but he noticed the shadows in her eyes, perhaps loneliness, perhaps grief resurfacing. He wished he had the right words, but all he could do was try to keep her world safe. That evening, a sudden storm rolled in. Rain hammered the roof in angry sheets, and the after-school program was cut short. Daniel stayed behind to finish the gym cleaning schedule. He didn't notice the time until his watch buzzed a late reminder. He sighed, rubbing his sore back, ready to head home to Lily. Then he heard it, a sharp, muffled cry. At first, he thought it was the wind. But then the cry came again, trembling, broken, unmistakably human. Daniel froze, his instincts waking like a sleeping beast. He set down his mop, moving quietly toward the rear exit of the gym, where a dim light flickered above the metal door. As he pushed it open, cold rain slapped his face, and his eyes adjusted to the darkness. That's when he saw them. 3 men, older, rough-looking, with alcohol-laced anger in their voices, had cornered a young girl against the wall. She was soaked, trembling, and desperately clutching her backpack. The tallest man yanked it from her shoulder as she cried, "Please, leave me alone!" Something ancient and fierce surged inside Daniel, a force he had buried for years, a force that once protected entire units on foreign soil. He stepped into the open, voice calm but steel-hard. "Let her go." All 3 heads snapped toward him. The one in front sneered. "What's a janitor going to do? Mop us to death?" Daniel didn't reply. He only stepped forward until the rain pooled around his boots. One of the men lunged first, but Daniel moved with quiet precision. A sharp sidestep, a swift arm lock, and the attacker hit the ground with a grunt. The second rushed him, but Daniel had already anticipated his weight shift. He grabbed the man's jacket and sent him crashing into the fence. The third, the biggest, swung wildly. Daniel took the hit to the shoulder but countered with a controlled strike to the ribs, dropping him to his knees. Within moments, the threat was over. The girl stared at him, breathless, soaked, and trembling. For a moment, she looked like Lily did when she cried in her sleep. Daniel softened his voice. "You're safe. Are you hurt?" She shook her head, tears mixing with rain. "My dad, he's away on duty. I didn't know who else." He handed her the backpack. "Let me walk you to the office. We'll call him." Daniel had no idea who her father was. He only knew she was scared, and he would have done the same for any child. But by morning, the entire school buzzed with whispers about the mysterious janitor who fought 3 men. Daniel ignored them and continued sweeping the halls, hoping the attention would fade. It didn't. At exactly 9:17 a.m., the front doors opened, and every sound in the hallway stopped. A tall, uniformed Navy admiral stepped in, metals shining, posture rigid with controlled fury. Teachers froze. Students stood speechless. The principal paled. The admiral's voice was low, cold, and commanding. "I'm looking for the man who protected my daughter last night." Daniel felt the broom slip slightly in his grasp. And before he could react, the admiral's eyes locked directly on him. Daniel stood completely still as the admiral approached. The school hallway felt narrower, quieter, as though the world itself held its breath. Teachers stepped back, students whispered, and even the principal seemed unsure whether to intervene. But Daniel didn't move, not out of fear, but confusion. He had done what anyone with a conscience would do. Why would a Navy admiral be looking for him? The admiral stopped just a few feet away. His uniform was soaked at the shoulders, as if he'd come straight from a long flight without sleeping. His jaw was clenched. His expression unreadable. And then Daniel noticed the trembling in the man's hand, not anger, but emotion barely held back. "You're Daniel Carter," the admiral said quietly, though his voice carried authority that filled the entire hall. Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes, sir." The admiral didn't speak at first. Instead, he studied Daniel with an intensity that made the silence heavy. Then, without warning, he snapped his heels together and gave Daniel a formal salute. The hallway gasped. Daniel took a step back, stunned. "Sir? I'm just—" "No," the admiral cut in. "You're the man who saved my daughter's life." Daniel swallowed hard, memories of the night before flashing through his mind, the rain, the fear, the men, the way the girl trembled in his arms. "I only did what anyone would have done." The admiral shook his head. "No. People watched. People turned away. You stepped in." His voice cracked for the first time. "You protected my child when I couldn't." The principal hurried over, hands wringing nervously. "Admiral Hayes, please, let's speak in my office. I'm sure Mr. Carter didn't intend for—" The admiral raised a hand without looking at him, silencing him instantly. "My daughter told me everything," he said, turning back to Daniel. "How you fought 3 grown men. How you held your ground. How you carried her inside when she could barely stand. How you made sure she wasn't alone." Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Compliments always felt like weight on his shoulders. "Is she okay?" "She's shaken," the admiral said softly, "but safe because of you." For a moment neither spoke. The hallway lights flickered faintly, and echoes of distant chatter drifted from upstairs classrooms. Then the admiral reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folded paper. "My daughter wrote this for you," he said. "She insisted I deliver it myself." Daniel took it hesitantly, unfolding the slightly crumpled note. The handwriting was small and shaky. "Thank you for saving me. You reminded me of my dad. I hope someone helps your daughter like you helped me." Daniel's throat tightened. He folded the paper carefully, almost reverently. "She didn't have to write anything." The admiral exhaled, his shoulders dropping slightly, the exhaustion of a man who carried worlds on his back. "Mr. Carter, you were military once, weren't you?" Daniel hesitated. "A long time ago." "Why did you leave?" Daniel's jaw clenched subtly. "My wife got sick. Lily needed me. Service wasn't compatible with that." The admiral nodded with deep understanding. "Duty to family is the highest duty of all." Before Daniel could reply, a familiar voice echoed down the hallway. "Daddy!" Lily ran toward him, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. Daniel knelt, opening his arms, and she crashed into him, hugging him tightly. Her small fingers clutched his shirt with relief and childish love. The admiral watched quietly, emotions flickering across his face, admiration, envy, gratitude, like a man seeing something sacred. Lily looked up at the Admiral curiously. Are you one of the important people? The Admiral chuckled softly. Sometimes. But today, your father is the most important man here. Daniel lifted Lily into his arms. We're okay, sweetheart. The Admiral straightened, clearing his throat. Mr. Carter. I didn't come just to thank you. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a sealed envelope. I came to offer you something. Something you deserve. Daniel frowned. Sir, I don't need any reward. This isn't a reward, the Admiral replied. It's an invitation. Daniel hesitated before opening it. Inside was a letter embossed with the Navy emblem, and a proposal that made Daniel's heart stop. The Admiral continued softly. We've read your old service record. Men like you, we don't forget them. If you're willing, we want you back. Not overseas. Not away from your daughter. But in a special stateside role, one that provides better pay, better benefits, and a future worthy of a man who risked everything for a child he didn't even know. The hallway went utterly silent. Daniel stared at the letter. His hands trembled. Lily looked between the two men, clueless but trusting. The Admiral stepped closer, voice steady and sincere. You saved my daughter. Let me help you save your own future. Daniel felt something inside him shift, the weight he had carried alone for years beginning, finally, to lift. And for the first time in a long time, hope didn't feel like a stranger.